But it's World Food Day today, a day organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. This has been celebrated since 1981. The theme for this year is Right to Food for a Better Life and a Better Future. And of course, the goal, as always, is to raise awareness about hunger, food security, and to ensure that everyone has access to healthy and nutritious meals. This is especially important for countries like Nigeria, where millions of people still face challenges. For instance, the United Nations says about 82 million Nigerians may go hungry soon, especially after that flood we saw in Maiduguri. World Bank says even now, over 1 million Nigerians are experiencing food insecurity. Recently, we saw from the NBS the cost of healthy diet at about 1,255 for a meal, which we know now is a difficult one for some Nigerians to access. Food inflation, from numbers released yesterday, we see went up about 11.88% to 37.53% for food inflation. And these are the realities for Nigeria and Nigerians. So, while we celebrate World Food Day in Nigeria, are we moving forward when it comes to food security? Let's talk to a farmer. They are the ones who are supposed to be producing this food for us. Is the Chief Executive Officer of Banjiko Farms, Mr. Tunde Banjiko, joins us virtually. Good afternoon, Mr. Banjiko, and thank you. Happy World Food Day, if I could say that.
Thank you, Ini. Thank you for having me. Yes, happy World Food Day.
But should we be saying happy? Should we be saying happy World Food Day in Nigeria when we see the cost of food? Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be stapling at all. In spite of the efforts of the government, I mean, we've seen packages, we've seen bag of rice being sold at subsidized rate. We've heard stamp duties are being suspended, and yet we're still feeling this pinch.
I think it's more about the implementation of all these policies that we are seeing the government roll out from time to time. It's beyond the papers. I think where the gap is the implementation, like the discount or waiver on custom duties, distribution of the food. We saw some of the criteria for the food being distributed, but I'm not sure they are really getting to those who really need it. We've seen cases where some of those food are being rebacked, and we've seen the struggling at some centers where the food is not readily and easily accessible. So I think for us to look at this properly, we should look at what's the model for implementation. That needs to be reviewed for some of these policies to start having impact. We've also seen some cases where some of these things are also being politicized rather than giving it to, every Nigerian. We see some people giving it to political party members and affiliations only. I had a first-hand experience of one area where I'm very familiar with, where names were given to them on the people to give it to. Not even everybody in that area here in this Lagos state. So that's why we are not seeing the effect of these policies. And that's why it's a sad thing that since 1979 till 1801, that this World Food Day has started to raise awareness for hunger. Nigeria is still not being actively doing so much to reduce the number of hungry people. The United Nations is telling us about 733 million people all over the world are hungry, about 2.9 billion food insecure. But like you rightly pointed out, close to 91 million people too are in that bracket, are in that, in that space. So what are we doing as a nation? I don't see us taking drastic steps to reduce that number. Rather, we are moving up in the hunger space. Now Nigeria is 110 out of 127 in the world. Like you rightly pointed out, we've grown by 1 million. Now we are with Nigeria, Ethiopia, Yemen, while other nations are working. Funny enough, most interesting of nations working on their hunger is Afghanistan and some other countries working on their hunger index to make sure that people have right and access to food. And United Nations is also emphasizing something this year, that is a right to food. After air and water, the next thing we should prioritize as a nation is food. But I'm not sure we are doing that much in our implementation in Nigeria.
So, what would you like to see to make you think or believe that we're doing the right things towards food security?
Okay, I think the first thing I want to see is, let's say, a clear program of the government. Last year, July, the president gave about 11 points on what they will work on, and most of us got excited that yes, these are clear policies, but the implementation became watered. There was no, okay, 500,000 hectares to be cleared, commodity board to be set, the food and water industry to work together so that we can do all year planting. But we've not seen actions in this space. So I think what we need to see now is up-to-date information and briefing on those 11-point items. We want to see how the food and the fertilizers, the grains that the government promised to give to farmers and hungry Nigerians, want to see how they are being distributed, data of how they are being distributed. I think if we start seeing this, we will know the government is really ready and serious. One key thing also in that space is the commodity board. That has not been talked about. I'm not seeing action. Of course, we've also said this severally, that we cannot keep relying on hoes and cutlasses. We can't keep relying on high interest fund to run agriculture in Nigeria. So now what have we done? For 4 or 5 years, we've been talking about recapitalizing Bank of Agric, and myself and you, we've discussed this severally. What have they done? Until I see that being done, I won't take Nigerian government serious about agriculture.
Joko, thank you for reminding me about the Bank of Agri, because the MD is your friend, and you were supposed to help us get him to talk to us, and that hasn't been successful for months now. So I mean, maybe you also have your own little part to play.
Of course, I will always do anything to make sure food is being produced en masse in Nigeria. And of course, probably one of these forums will try and get the MD of Bank of Agri to come and share their view, because this bottleneck in production is taking us back. It's taking us back. Look at the recently released data you just read out. Our food inflation, we made about 2 months progress. Now all the progress made in 2 months has been lost just because the fuel price was increased. And now one of the things I think the government needs to start doing, we need to subsidize those input that goes into direct production. The seedlings, there should be direct subsidies. We've enjoyed subsidies even as young as I am during the time of President Jonathan, when Dr. Akinwumi Adesina was the minister. We enjoyed subsidized input as farmers. So the fertilizers should be subsidized and given directly to farmers. The input should be subsidized, given to farmers. That's when we will know, we'll start feeling it as farmers and as Nigerians, that the government is really prioritizing food security. And look at the effect of the flood in Borno and so many other northern states now. And it's going to have serious effect in the few numbers coming up for the rest of the year and early next year. So those are the things, we look at the numbers, about 3.3 million people displaced already because of all these floods. I'm sure 90% of this number are farmers. About 31.1 of them, over close to 800,000 hectares lost already due to flood and other issues in Nigeria at the moment. We are not talking about recovering those land. We are not talking about multiplying our annual yield per hectare. So until we start having conversations, until we start having the private sectors driving some of this change in collaboration with government, then I won't take this government serious.
All right, Tabot. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your passion with us. I guess that's why we've been asking for the Minister of Agriculture He hasn't answered us. We've seen him on our sister program, Politics Today, but we'll keep hope alive and believe
Yeah.
that one day he would answer the business program and come and speak to us, because there's so many issues around food security. And when you talk about food, everybody's involved. The rich and the poor are concerned. So we hope that one of these days, perhaps some of those issues you've raised, where we see policies or we hear policies, but we actually don't see the implementation, would that to be some of the things we'll ask him. But thank you so much, Mr. Banjoko, for sharing this celebration day with us.
Thank you, Amy, for having me.